Welcome Hudson's Bay students to our virtual MLK Junior celebration.
I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history for the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Today we will learn about MLK and what he did for our country, for each other, and for the fabric that makes up the community today. Our Bayway traits of community, perseverance, ownership, and critical thinking, and empathy are evident in the work Dr. King pursued so many years ago.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister and leading activist during the 20th century civil rights movement. He was born Michael Luther King Jr. on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, and later changed his name to Martin. King grew up steeped in religion and activism. His father was a reverend at Ebenezer Baptist Church and a local NAACP leader. A talented student, King skipped 2 grades in high school and entered Morehouse College at age 15. King was skeptical about Christianity as a boy, but later embraced his faith and entered the seminary. While earning a doctorate at Boston University, King met aspiring singer Coretta Scott. They married in 1953 and had 4 children: Yolanda, Martin Luther III, Dexter Scott, and Bernice. King established himself as a rising star in the civil rights movement. After Rosa Parks' arrest in Alabama in December 1955 for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger, the NAACP chose King to lead the Montgomery bus boycotts. The protests ultimately led to a U.S. Supreme Court decision which outlawed segregation on public buses in Alabama. With civil rights demonstrations emerging all over the country, King helped organize the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to unite them. Inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, King advocated nonviolent protests like boycotts and sit-ins. King's most famous triumph came at the 1963 March on Washington, which brought over 200,000 peaceful protesters to the nation's capital. On the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, King delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. King put his life on the line for many of his protests. A 1965 march for voting rights in Selma, Alabama, turned violent when police viciously attacked the protesters in a conflict dubbed Bloody Sunday. Ever determined, King led another Selma demonstration 2 days later. When the marchers reached a bridge blocked by state troopers, they simply knelt down in prayer. King and other leaders persisted, launching a 3rd march days later under the protection of the Alabama National Guard and other marshals ordered by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The power of King's activism compelled Johnson to sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. King also won the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize. As the Vietnam War intensified, King focused his movement on what he saw as the 3 major evils of racism, poverty, and militarism. By 1968, King had made many enemies and recognized he might not live to see the fruits of his labor. He shared this sentiment in his speech entitled, "I Have Been to the Mountaintop." The next day, April 4th, King was fatally shot on the balcony of a Tennessee motel by James Earl Ray. King's assassination, however, could not erase his progress or his legacy. His family and followers continued to fight for equality to this day. Since 1986, the United States has honored him every January on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Dr. King has meant a lot of different things to me. One, he's shown me just through the books and the things I've learned over life is just his leadership. It starts there, his perseverance, right? His fight for equality.
I think the main thing with our family is just being my mom, being a child of that era, just kind of exemplifying, trying to live the ways in which he was talking about.
But me personally, One of the things that Dr. Martin Luther King's message has done for me over time is allowed me to have the freedom to choose who it is that I want to be with. And so I'm married to a white female. If it wasn't for the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the people who were surrounding him and supporting him, and the people who are unnamed, the unknown people who are working behind the scenes, if it wasn't for all the people that paved the way before me, that marriage that I have now, the marriage that I have, it wouldn't be in existence.
That is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must be able to conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone.
To me, civil rights means the equity and equality of all humans, no matter their race, gender, ethnicity.
Civil rights to me are laws that have helped the progression of my people and my community in this country today.
It's a way of showing what people believe in and that everyone should be treated equally no matter what they believe in or who they are. Civil rights are expressed through community, as in no one's getting treated more like better or less than someone. Everyone's being treated equal. Everyone cares for one another no matter what they believe in, and people are treated like humans, and there's no racism, sexism, anything.
I think they develop empathy by trying to learn and understand what other races have gone throughout time in our country, and trying to come together today to make sure that we don't make those same mistakes.
We refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us a pawn, demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgencies of now. This is no time to engage in the luxuries of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Celebrate and honor Dr. King because he was a leader, and it was a very rough time when it happened, but he stepped up, and when he saw something that wasn't right in America, he took charge and he fixed it.
I think that we celebrate and honor Dr. King because he did something very big and super important to a lot of people, and it was big, eye-opening, and then starting to happen again in the world, and it's just super important that people know who he was and what he did for everybody.
He made such a big movement for his people and most people around the world, for them to, like, I don't know, they take a day off so that we have time to think about what he did for us and how do we reflect on what he did for his speech and how it touched so many hearts.
Dr. King identified problems, found solutions, implemented solutions as a leader.
Dr. King showed perseverance when pushing for equality because he kept going, he had support behind him, and it was just a relentless battle, and eventually he got to his goal, and it took a long time, but he persevered through the strength of himself and others.
Dr. King showed empathy by stepping up to the plate for being the voice of his people and spreading love in his words to make a movement for his people.
It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment.
It would be fatal for the nations to overlook the urgencies of the moment.
One day.
One day. One day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.